I'm very glad to welcome all our old and new friends here. Our meeting today is dedicated to Russian South Arabian Studies. It's called New Data from Family Archives of Upper Yāfi region. I think that we don't need to introduce Professor Vitaly Naumkin, the president of the Institute of Oriental Studies of the Russian Academy of Science. About the reglement of our meeting, about the format of our meeting, there will be a lecture, a speech, with a presentation by Vitaly Naumkin for about 40 minutes. Yeah, Vitaly, I think. And then we'll have a discussion on the topic. I'll stop here and I'll give floor to Vitaly. Vitaly, please.
Thank you. Good evening, all. You know the title of my lecture, and I'll start with the beginning. So this South Arabian Studies is one of the main directions of our studies in our institute, given the long history of the Yemeni studies in general in the Institute of Oriental Studies. And about 50 years ago, we decided to explore South Arabia from several directions of the exploration. So first one is history, the second one is ethnology, the third one is languages, and the fourth one is archaeology. So in this realm, expeditions were organized. So first of all, just exploring visits of some scholars to the region, and then the expedition to the Yemen, which was formed in the beginning of the 90s. So I started visiting the region from the beginning of the 70s, so around 50 years ago. And I would like to mention or to tackle the issue of one of the regions in the central part of the south part of the Yemen, which is Yāfi al-Ulya. I think that the idea was that to bring together our Sakotri and Hadrami studies that started to be a part of our activities, and to link them to what we know about the ancient South Arabia. So first, I would like to show you a couple of our publications on the Sakotri studies to have an idea of what we're doing in the realm of the linguistic studies. So please, the first volume of our, the results of our, studies in Sakotri fieldwork, working with a lot of informants and colleagues in Socotra. So it's, as I said, it's already about 40 years. For myself, it's more. It's about 50 years of visits and work in Socotra. So the first volume of Corpus of Socotri Oral Literature was published by Brill Publishers. So please, the second page to understand Lisa, please. Mm-hmm. And it's a group of mostly young scholars, especially Professor Leonid Kogan and Dr. Maria Bulach, as well as our Socotran colleagues and friends who are co-authors of this first volume, followed by the second volume. Each of these volumes consists of about 800 pages of the collection of oral literature samples. Lisa, can you start? This is the second volume which was published, and the third volume will come out of press pretty soon. Can we see the second page, Lisa? And then just for the entertainment, the old passport, of a Socotra citizen of the Sultanate of Mahra and Socotra in the 60s, which is here on the screen. So then when we started doing this, I started thinking about some positive link between one of the mostly unknown, with the exception of the Austrian expedition to the island, mostly unknown part of the heritage of South Arabia and the live South Arabian languages, trying to find the link. Contrary to some amateurish judgments about the break of continuity and interconnection between, first of all, the ancient languages of South Arabia inscriptions and modern Arabic dialects of the Yemen, as well as the live South Arabian languages mentioned here, Sokotri, Mahri, and Jibali, these links are still there, as can be demonstrated by the comparative study of South Arabian dialects and Sokotri, Mahra, Jibali languages. So I started in the beginning of 70s trying to collect some data from Upper Yāfi, but unfortunately I had to choose what to do, either Socotra or Mahra. Very difficult to do together all these sorts of things. And I'll start with some short description of what the Yāfi is. One of the very interesting, extremely interesting mountainous regions of Yemen, Upper Yāfi. Dr. Sargent wrote the name Yāfi already occurs in the pre-Islamic inscriptions and places to which reference is made, as here already figure as Yāfi territory in Hamdani's geography. It's the 10th century. So historically, Yāfi is divided into Upper and Lower Yāfi. And the Yāfi mountain dwellers were known for their strength, endurance in the perfect and mastery of wielding arms. The lack of land resources spurred them into migrations, vast migrations, long migrations to Java, for instance, and so on. From about the beginning of the 16th century, the Yāfi tribes began to settle in certain areas of Hadramaut, east of Yāfi, and some regions of Southeast Asia, as they said. For instance, the influence of the Yāfi was facilitated by the fact that the ruler Al-Kathiri, Badr Butuwayriq, enrolled the Yāfi'as in the army. The same was about the Hyderabad Nizam, so-called Nizam. During the medieval times, mountain Yāfi'as owned to their isolated location depended but little on central authority, formally obeying various rulers and retained its separate identity. Then we can say that the socio-economic and political system of Upper Yāfi saw little change over a long period, right down to the 70s, where I came there, keeping its peculiar features intact. So we can say that in the, for instance, economic field, it was the absence of large-scale land property, the predominance of small-scale property, the dominance of a patriarchal economy, limited use of hired labor, the prevalence of lease and mortgage of land, tribal division of labor, low productivity, and slight social differentiation. In the political field, these peculiar features were manifested in the absence of a strong central authority. Lisa, can you show us how I went there for the first time? This is the picture, and all these factors, along with the lack of land, natural fragmentation of our agricultural property, and harsh climatic conditions and geographic isolation, it was making the image of the Yāfi'as in the eyes of the Yemenis very specific. The Yafi'as lived in clans, forming part of tribes, which in their turn combined the tribal unions or confederations. Up to the time when I went there, and even now, each village in Upper Yāfi was a settlement of a certain clan or tribe. There existed a tribal division of labor, and each tribe or each section had a traditional occupation. There were tribes of farmers, potters, blacksmiths, stone masons, carpenters, dyers, musicians, brushwood collectors, witch doctors and exorcists, and so forth. And the Yafi'as are very widely known in the region as great masons. Sargent gave a brilliant description of Yafi tribes in his article dedicated to the region. The immigration, as I said, was a very significant part of their heritage. The tribes paid the tithe to the Sultan or Sheikh, who had the rights of suzerain, and some tribes were exempted from tax payment. So Upper Yāfi tribes were often locked in deadly feud with each other. Mountain dwellers strove to build houses as high above as possible. A man who lived in a high position felt more secure and enjoyed an advantage over his lower neighbor in case of conflict. The sultans, sheikhs, and aqils built their houses in the highest places. To guard land property, cylindrical watchtowers were erected from where their owners could fire their guns. I'm not going to, it's difficult to show you some pictures, but I have a collection of them. We'll make it later. There are always special distinction between the upper, Ulyan, and lower people, lower Suflan. As I said, the women in Yafia took an active part in economic activity on a par with the men, a fact noted long ago by medieval Arab authors. Until the last years of Islamization, the women never wore a veil, enjoying much greater freedom than was the case in other regions of the Yemen. Among the peculiar customs of mountain women was a custom to make themselves up with bright mineral dye stuffs, which they themselves explained not only by the need to adorn themselves, but also by the desire to protect facial skin from exposure to extremely dry mountain air. So the most popular mineral dye was wars of red color. So we can say that also deprivation, the special attitude towards daughters was there. The deprivation of daughters of a share of their inheritance was helped to preserve the property of families and tribes, their survival and the maintenance of intertribal peace. As one of my informant explained those days, otherwise a poor or crafty bridge groom could marry on purpose in order to get hold of another's property. But according to the norm of common law, brothers were obliged to keep the sisters completely and give them a place in the house they married until they married. Brothers were actually obliged to make presents, clothes, food, or household goods to married sisters. It was called hadiyya or qadiyya. In case if the sister got divorced, they had the right to return into the house of her brothers, and they were again obliged to keep her, and so on and so forth. I'm trying to make it as concise as possible. So then we'll come to the very specific things I saw in the beginning of the 70s, not available now. The Yafi'i mountain dwellers were retaining many ancient customs and remnants of pre-Islamic beliefs. Not far from Lab'us, this was those days the capital of Upper Yāfi, made by the leftist government of the People's Republic of South Yemen, in order to undermine the role of the traditional centers of tribal authority. There existed a mausoleum of the so-called Holy Bull, Al-Wali Al-Thur, which was a relic of an old pastoral cult. It was customary to perform a pilgrimage to the grave of the bull, similar to the graves of Muslim saints. Women asked it to fulfill their wishes. certain rare traces of Judaism common in some parts of the Yemen prior to Islam have been preserved in the region. And also during the Middle Ages, the Yāfi'is were known as the Yāfi'i region was one of the centers of Karmatism in Arabia. Family archives in the Yāfi' contained various documents held by the families and might have served as one of the most important sources for the history of this highly interesting region of the Yemen. In the course of fieldwork carried by me in Upper Yāfi, I was presented a number of documents from family archives dating from different post-medieval or late medieval periods. It was very difficult to systematize them. The documents, as you can see here, some samples were written in ink on paper. Their interpretation is extremely difficult. They contain many of grammatical mistakes. So some people named this bad Arabic, including Mr. Hamadani. Hamadani in the 10th century, he was using the term bad Arabic. There was good Arabic or bad Arabic. The Arabic with mistakes. So local dialect words are used and diacritics are not everywhere included. A number of words and even phrases are illegible. There are gaps as well as page breaks and other defects. And here are some of the samples of the spoken dialects of Upper Yāfi. There are several spoken dialects where, so I'll come back to some probably linguistic, characteristics of that. And I'll name only in brief some types of the documents I tried to elaborate. For instance, a deed of purchase, which is Sijil Bay'a. You can see them here. And so all of them are stamped with the, stamps of some qadis or some, other esteemed persons who are witnessing the deed. And there are also, so a part of that, there are some other different, types of document. For instance, something was about the mortgage deeds, some about the inheritance deeds, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to speak about all of them. I've published recently a paper on that. It's a small book about this, very small, about these different types of documents. At the same time, we can see that as I said, unfortunately, we were not able to make archaeological research there, and now it's absolutely impossible due to the war in Yemen. But studying these documents helped us a lot, including to understand many things about the local dialect as well. So I can say that it was. There were only several researchers who tried to study dialects of Upper Yāfi. In principle, there were, more than 100 years ago, the Austrian expedition, the Austrian Academy of Sciences, Mr. Müller and Landberg, who wrote about the dialects of this part of the Yemen. But in this our days, so nobody was able, to work there, with the exception of some French researchers like Martin Vanov, and we have also, I think, I have some articles with me done by another researcher, but which is very rare. And even in the beginning of '90s, when Martin Vanhoff started her research trying to make a review of several tribes, informants from several tribes in the Upper Yāfi. The situation was different there. Even the regions she mentioned were different. Her survey comprised 25 villages. It's now very important to refer to her work, but now the local researchers are making their own exploration there, which is important. Well, I'll show you some books. For instance, this is one of the researchers, Dr. Ali Saleh al-Khulaqi, who wrote a book about Adat wa Taqalid al-Zawaj wa Aghani fi Yāfi'. So it's about the local customs, marital ceremonies, and songs related to marriage and to all this sort of things. And as Martin, oh, by the way, it's interesting. Can I see the map, which was, where is the map? The map is showing, it's about the continuity and the interconnection between different strata of languages. So it's after Mr. Hamadani in the 10th century. So he mentioned it is done on the basis of Hamadani's description he made in the 10th century about the first. It is language with not language but some spoken thing, which is called Rodn. It's parlé compréhensible. It means that it's difficult to understand it and appreciate. So you can see the other is Himeritic, which is absolutely amazing. So Hamadani is speaking about the Himerite language as if it was still available, and then it is Arab Mele Dimerite, where so you see 4 areas where it is the mixture of Arabic and ancient South Arabian. It's also interesting. And then it's around these areas we can see where is M, letter M, it's Mauvais Arab, and then Bon Arab, which is most of the territory of the Yemen in general. So we can see, so I'll tackle the issue of some probably words and some peculiarities that demonstrate the closeness of the different dialects. I said that I've mentioned already that there are several, and the ancient South Arabian and the live South Arabian languages. For instance, if we take the verb conjugation, we can see that, for instance, that the whole area is divided into the verbs are divided into K type and T type. For instance, instead of katabt, I wrote in the first person, they say katabk. So K is the suffix which is used by them widely. I can also say that, for instance, just for example, if we take some conjugation of, as an example, for instance, the word arrive, wasal, you know this from Arabic. So it's the most frequently used verb, and in all dialects as well. So I, for instance, in the region which is called Jabal Yazidi, a part of the Upper Yāfi, say I arrived is wasalku. So you, the second person masculine, it's wasalk, and the woman, the feminine is wasalshi. And for instance, of course, he arrived is wasal, but she arrived is wasala. And A is the ending instead of what we know about the Arabic and most of the dialects. And there are a lot of more surprising words there, and a lot of it's in the perfect and in the perfect conjugation. We can see some even more strange words. If we take, for instance, the same wasal to arrive in Jabal Yazidi. I arrive, which is imperfect, is asal, and you it's atsal, and you feminine is atsalin, and he is aisal, and she is atsal, and so on and so forth. So there are also a lot of differences between different names. For instance, where Hamza is changed by ayn into Hamza, Qaf and Ghain are also changed one to another. If we take, for instance, a word cat, very widely used word in the dialects, so it's either Aseni or Eseni. So Hamza, Ayn is all the same, instead of the popular Arabic name for cat in the Yemen, which is Bissa. Instead of Bissa, it's this one. Or if we take, for instance, goat, it's Ummi, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to spoke about some other things. So we have a different book, which is Mu'jam Lahjat Yafa, also dialect dictionary, which is also the result of research by Dr. Ali Saleh Al-Khulaqi. All these books are huge, so hundreds of pages, but written by the same author. There are, of course, not a big group of scientists under the present conditions in Yemen, but still trying to do something, and even to publish things in Sana'a under the Houthis. So I think that it's very interesting that the people are still working. Science is there, and I think there is another sample of what they're writing. Our friends, I am communicating with them by emails. It's الأسلحة التقليدية في الشعر الشعبي اليمني, so traditional weaponry in Yemen popular poetry. So a lot of interesting things are being developed there, despite the war and despite lack of interest on the part of the researchers community. So I would like to come to the final part of my short presentation. Is there something else? Or it's the the documents I mentioned. So we can show to you how we are working with these documents. We still have to preserve them in a proper way. That will be done in one of our museums. Until now, they have been kept as they had been kept in the families of Yafia. So they presented to me some of the dear to their hearts documents in order to make it available to science. So you can see how we were reading them, and you can imagine how difficult it is to interpret them. We'll show you several. In this way, that they were kept in families. Documents of the ownership of land, or the purchase of land, or the purchase of some other property. Very, very old. Starting from mostly from the 17th century and up to the 19th century. They've been kept. Of course, now the situation is different there. I don't know what's going there during the war and who is controlling this region. But we can see. So please, all Arabists, you can start studying them. And I think it's a very charming, work, trying to find out what is behind it. The whole life of the local tribes is, condensed in these documents about it. I don't know how they were able to give them to a researcher, but I think it's I'm very thankful to my colleagues who gave them this. We'll keep them as in our museum, and we'll turn them into under protection. We'll still need to protect them. Anything else? No? It's the final, yes, the final document. So, in brief, to conclude, I have only one thing to. Oh, by the way, it's also one small book we published just recently, just several days ago. The first collection of the Socotra folk literature. It was oral literature collected by our, with the help of our Socotra friends. You can see the two gentlemen and one lady, the wife, one of the informants and colleagues. So they made this in two languages, Socotra and Arabic. We've made translation, and they helped us. But they wrote this, some certain samples of Socotra oral folk literature. For the first time, they're using the alphabet, the letters that we not invented, but introduced for the common use on the basis of the Arabic letters, with some diacritics and so on and so forth, accepted by the local population. I think it's one of our main, if you can say, not achievements, but results of our work. So given that, I can say that the study of, on the one hand, of live languages of the Yemen, of South Yemen, of the south of Yemen, I can say, like Socotra, and followed by Mahri, because we have also a collection of Mahri recordings in Mahra, also done in the 70s and 80s. We have some results of the archaeological research published by my colleague Alexander Sidov, Professor Alexander Sidov, and our great archaeologists from St. Petersburg. And we have all this language and literature exploration results, which I mentioned. In brief, I can say that finding a link between the old ancient South Arabian, like I don't know, Sabaean and Hadrami and so on and so forth, and the dialects of this part of the south of the Yemen, and these live languages, finding this link, how these language areas preserve some features of the ancient inscriptions language. It's an important task that will be, I'm sure, explored by the future generation of scientists. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Naumkin, for your so interesting presentation. We're ready to start our discussion, and I would like to start with giving the floor to His Excellency Yemen Ambassador to Moscow, Ahmed Waheishi. Dr. Waheishi, please. Salt. The fish salt.
Salt, Badu.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
You're welcome, Ambassador. Nice to see you.
I say once more, thank you very much, and thanks for the Oriental Institute in Moscow for organizing this lecture, which is, besides many other events I attend to Russia and to our region. And many thanks to my dear friend Vitaly Naumkin for these very informative lecture we listened today. He was so kind also to give me the book about Yāfi al-Ulya, which was published recently, and I went through. I congratulate Vitaly on the book. If you allow me, I don't want to take much of your time. I'm not expert in this field, but just I want to mention very quickly and in a very short manner some remarks which might be useful for your deliberation and for your future work. Number one, today, the 30th of November, is the anniversary of the independence from the British colonialists, and the Yāfi, as in the document mentioned, that they are good militant people. They really made a contribution to the struggle for the independence in my country. So the second remark I want to mention is that in the 60s, when I was doing my secondary studies in Lebanon, I came to know that some universities, like the American University of Beirut, was giving some courses about the Himyari language. I don't know if it is still there or not, but it shows at that time many people interested in joining these courses for such a language not to, disappear and to keep live, and then helps to understand the subscription or to go back to study the old history. Of course, in the document of Vitaly about Yāfi, he mentioned that they are producing coffee. Coffee needs areas above the sea level for cold weather, which is rare in the Arab Peninsula. That's why it is there in Yāfi, because it is very high above sea level, the mountainous areas. And it needs a rough soil, not the soft soil of the valleys, to make a good coffee. And it is one of the areas in Yemen which produce coffee. And then it was exported from the Muka port, and then well known in the world and became a brand name, Muka coffee. Even some countries who produce coffee from Latin America, they use this brand name. And this is the origin of it. And we are thinking sometimes to organize an exhibition of coffee here in Moscow, and some coffee tasting, I would rather say, for people who like to have coffee. I am happy also that Vitaly has mentioned some facts, which some people now, with the fanatics and some terrorists who are trying to dominate our region, are making it like a taboo, that there were some in Yāfi and other parts of Yemen, some evidence of previous followers of different faiths. Judaism was there in Yemen, Christianity was there in Yemen, and then came Islam. And on the contrary to these fanatics, scholars, when they highlight this matter, it helps for the interfaith dialogue. It helps to raise the tolerance in our country and in the region towards different faith. And this is a valuable information which Vitaly had brought up in his book. I would like to mention that there are some institutes in the region. When I was General Counsel of Yemen, for example, in Emirates, one big businessman, he devoted a special in Dubai center to make maintenance for documents, because some of the documents which Vitaly has shown are really under the threat that it might be lost or destroyed. And maintaining the paper documents is not an easy thing. And this businessman, his name is Jum al-Majid in Emirates, and they're always ready to help for maintaining some of the documents of this old type. Now, my last remark is, before the last, there was a reference, just to correct small issue. Here in the Arabic text in your book, Vitaly, you were mentioning the Yafis who went to as soldiers in Hadramaut with the Kaiti or the Kathiri, that they are murtazaka, means the translation of it is mercenaries. This is very sensitive issue. I think no, it is recruitment. I mean, the Sultan is there because the Hadramis are very civilian people, and they are not very much willing to join military services. And then the Sultans in Hadramaut, they were recruiting people from neighboring parts like Yafa, who are, I mean, more of a tendency to join army. And the same thing when I was ambassador of the Arab League in India, I visited Hyderabad many times, and I came to know that the Sultan of Hyderabad was also recruiting people from Yafa in his troops. And I went to visit that part of Hyderabad. Until today, it's called the barracks. Barracks in English means a camp, but the camp is no more there. And it's only now houses of people of the third and fourth generation of these Yafis who went and recruited in the, and this issue of the migration of the Yafis and Hadramis is very important to study. I have a book myself because I was ambassador of Yemen in Indonesia, and I collected some documents, and I was able to publish a book. I gave a copy to Vitaly once as a present to him. I published it in English in India under the name Hadrami Diaspora Looking East. And I would love any other time, if the Oriental Institute would like to organize a similar lecture to make a presentation of my book on this Hadmari diaspora, because it will be...
We'll make it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because it will complete the picture of the Yafis, the Hadramis. There is very much interlinked. And finally, when I learned about this very important lecture, I was not only happy with it, but I was motivated by the idea. And I called upon many Yafis, telling them about this seminar, and they thank the people who organize it, and they are ready in the future to cooperate. Just, I will mention their names very quickly. Dr. Muhammad Ahmad Gurhum, he is now in the United States, and he is trying to focus all his efforts, he's in Washington, D.C., on the slang of the Yafis and their, languages and some of their traditions. There is another who is interested, Ali Fadl Harhara. He's in UK, and he did some efforts in this field. And Muhammad Muhsin Al-Amri, he's now in Emirates. Also, he wrote some of these, literature in the same direction. They are all Yafis. And of course, Vitaly mentioned that Ali Saleh Al-Khalaqi did many literature. He is until now the dean of the faculty in Yafa itself. It is a university faculty, and he sent me a lot of his publications to make it available for the participants of this lecture and the Institute. And another scholar, his name is Mahmoud Salami. And last but not least, speaking about the tribes in Yemen, there is one of the earliest graduates of Moscow from Yemen, Dr. Abu Bakr Sakaf. He's an outstanding Arabic thinker and a long-standing professor in Sana'a University. Now his retirement, he's here available in Moscow. And he wrote a book about the tribes in Yemen. And at the previous time, when Yemen was divided, to avoid any, harassment, he put it under not his real name. But thanks God, recently, last year, with the help of a lot of his friends, he was able to republish the same book about the Yemeni tribes under his real name, Abu Bakr Sakaf, and it was published in Cairo. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to join you in this lecture. And we hope that there will be another possibilities to speak at length. I try to be very brief. And sorry,
there's a British scholar, Dr. Ahmed. There is a British scholar also, Paul Dresch, who probably you know his book about the Yemeni tribes, mostly around Sana'a and in the north.
Yeah.
Paul Dresch.
But this one of Abu Bakr Sakaf is also
Abu Bakr, of course, it's I know.
One who is worth reading it.
It's birth.
And he can bring him because he's here in Moscow to the Oriental Institute to, in this, if you are planning to continue this series of lectures. Yes,
we'll continue.
I would recommend strongly that matter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ohesh. I've seen the hand of my friend Yusuf Sharif. Yusuf? Oh, it was a mistake. I have seen your hand, no? Sorry.
No, it was just clapping. Sorry.
Okay. My friends, if anybody wants to comment and to ask something.
I would like to make an intervention. Professor Naumkin, thank you so much for your brilliant, as usual, and most informative, as usual, report on this very interesting issue. Actually, I have a question. In which form were these documents? Did they look like a real archive, any kind of archive? Were they in boxes, in asanadik, or in any other form? And what was the reason for preserving them, for collecting them? Just the interest for the history of the people, or just the attempt to show that they have the history? So what was the reason for preserving them? Because many of us had the opportunity to preserve some family, notes, books, etc. Some preserved, some did not preserve. Yemeni, succeeded in that. Please, give us additional comments on that, please.
So I believe that it was a unique source of information about the medieval and post-medieval history of the Yemen, of this part. As I said, it is a link between different parts of the Yemen from the point of the social, economic history, and also customs and rights and customs, and from the linguistic part side, and it's very important. I think in general there were several research attempts, to study tribes, and most of them, as I said, for instance, the British researcher Professor Paul Dresch wrote a great book on that, but and even there was some poetry, tribal poetry in his book as well. It's very good. And but such documents that are mostly kept in houses and which were not made available to public. So it was a rare opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, most of the documents I got were I gave to the Center of Research in Aden in the end of the 70s, and this document perished during the war in '94, unfortunately. So.
Thank you. Other comments or questions or remarks? Alain Reich, bonsoir Alain. He envoyed us the link to two links already to this book by
Paul Dresch, yes. I mentioned
Paul Dresch, yes. Thank you. Merci Alain. if we don't have any other questions or comments, so I just want to thank Vitaly, to thank Professor Naumkin one more time. It's a really fantastic issue. It's really a fantastic work you do. Thank you so much. We'll publish, I think that one of these days we'll publish your latest book about the Yāfi region in our institute site. And we'll send the link to all our colleagues. And also this lecture is recorded. Also send the link to our colleagues, because I know that there are some colleagues who wanted to invite the students, but by some reasons they couldn't do it. So you'll have a chance. Thank you so much, and have a good evening. Thank you. So
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Vitaly. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
thank you.